Hey listeners, if managing property finances feels like a full-time job, it's time to check out Ledger.ai. Ledger.ai makes property accounting simple by automating your finances, tracking expenses, and keeping you organized all without the stress. It's like having an accounting pro in your corner so you can focus on growing your portfolio. Visit ledger.ai/podcast today and let them handle the heavy lifting. That's ledgre.ai/podcast.
This episode with real estate investor John Blatchford was originally recorded on July 21st, 2025. With the start of a new year, we wanted to bring it back because the house hacking, financing, and renovation tips John shares are especially valuable for anyone looking to kick off their real estate investing journey in 2026.
What's going on, everybody? I'm Zach, and I'm here with my co-host, Patrick.
What is up?
We are your hosts for the Rentish Podcast, which is a podcast kind of about rental properties and hosted by two guys that work in the real estate industry and kind of know what they're talking about.
But mostly don't.
That's right, Patrick. Mostly we don't. But we might have someone here who does. Spoilers! We'll get to it here in a second. But you're going to have fun hearing us talk to experts and learning with us or laughing along at how little we know along the way. Rentish Podcast, follow us, do the things. We talk about it every single week, right? Anything that you can do. We appreciate you for listening to the show. If you've gotten this far in the episode already, we really thank you for coming around and listening to the show. It's been really fun doing this podcast with Patrick and all of our guests. And follow us on Instagram at The Rentish Pod. You can email questions at therentishpod.com if you have a question or comment that you'd like to share with us, or maybe just a topic suggestion, advice for fellow renters or people that are interested in real estate and property management, or if you're a esteemed guest or maybe someone famous and you want to be on the show, email us. We'll thoroughly vet these, I'm sure. Yeah, that's about it for the podcast. Patrick, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. Full of energy.
Yeah?
Yeah. Can't you tell?
Yeah. Oh, I can tell. Yeah, I mean, you're very a twinkle in your eye.
Yeah.
You're ready to rock and roll. Well, we got a special episode today. We're not going to do the typical, rigmarole here at the top where we talk about Superman and the fact that it's coming out in a month. But we're going to talk with a very special guest. So in this real estate investing series, we're going to be diving into a strategy that's all about turning your living space into an income stream. It's called house hacking, apparently. This one's especially popular with younger investors, first-time home buyers, or anyone looking to ease into real estate without tacking on a ton of risk. The idea, buy a property, live in part of it, and rent out the rest to cover your mortgage or even turn a profit. And to help us break it down. You could lots of new words here. To help us break it down, we're joined again by John Blatchford from Cohorts, who was here a few weeks ago to talk to us about buying new properties and renovating them. And he's going to walk us through what house hacking really looks like, how to make it work, and who should or shouldn't try it. And judging by how rough my intro was there, I would say maybe we shouldn't try it. But we're going to learn about it. John, thank you for coming back on the podcast.
What's up, fellas?
Not much. I don't know. What's up with you?
All's well.
All's well. That's
Sunny
good.
day, well caffeinated. Everything's good.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, I think we're all in the caffeination department. I think I've had a half pot of coffee and a soda, so I'm ready to rock.
That's the problem. I haven't had any caffeine yet today.
No caffeine at all?
No, that's what it is. I've been doing Earl Grey tea with honey. That's been my thing recently.
Okay, that sounds
And
nice.
I heated up the kettle, and I realized now I forgot to pour it in my mug.
The producer was just in the room asking you if you wanted to drink, and you declined.
No, I didn't decline. I said yes, and he said too bad.
Talent.
This is not how things
gets
went.
what they want.
That's what I'm saying.
I think you're wrong. I think I heard you say no. I'm good.
I said I want one.
Oh,
you misheard.
I misheard. I'm sorry.
Or maybe I misspoke.
John, educate us. You're here to talk about house hacking. We're very curious to hear about what you have to say. We're here with open ears. I'm sure we're going to have questions, but take it away. We kind of are just, we're your audience today. This is your TED Talk.
Yeah, cool. Well, thanks, guys. I think we're kind of, building on or continuing our series, which I think is effectively, how do you go from 0 properties to whatever your dream is, say 100 units or 1,000 units. So we talked about my first property recently and kind of how I got into it. And hopefully, from all the mistakes I've made, I can help people not make those mistakes. But this is a good way to get started, this topic of house hacking. And I think the general idea is, if you are working at a job and you want to get into real estate, what is the pathway to do that? And one consideration is like, what are you hoping to get out of that? Are you trying to ultimately become a real estate developer? Do you want to quit your job in 10 years? Do you want to just have some safe investment over the next 30 years? And I think that'll kind of dictate what you want to do.
Right.
But one like fairly low bar, fairly easy way to get into real estate is this idea of house hacking, which is basically, instead of just buying your house, which can be a great lifestyle choice and, can be a good long-term investment, turning that house or property you buy into something that can make you some money.
Right.
Or at least that somebody will pay to live there and can pay your mortgage. So this idea of house hacking, I think, is basically, the hacking part of it sounds a little bad, I would say. Like, oh, how do you hack your way in? And
it sounds cool, like an 80s like tech bro. I'm gonna hack this house.
Get into the mainframe.
Yeah.
But it's basically, how do you get money? How do you get somebody to pay your mortgage or to pay to live in this house?
Sure.
And so, I think there are different ways to do that, certainly. But I think the first hack is that if a house costs $400,000, obviously you do not need $400,000 in cash to buy that. That would be impossible. And so there's this first idea of just like, you can get debt, you can get a loan against your house. And most people, appreciate that when they get their mortgage. But a mortgage might come at like, 20% down payment on the house or something. So even for a $500,000 house, $400,000 house, you need $100,000 in cash, which for a lot of people, won't come until much later in life.
Right.
So one way to get into a house with less cash is, an FHA loan. I've talked to a lot of people. A good friend of mine, Donovan, has done it and now built a really successful real estate business. But it's a way to sort of get started with, say, 5% down. So in that same $400,000 property, you now only need $20,000. And a lot of people can work their way up to having $20,000 that they could invest. With an FHA loan, you can buy the property if it's your primary residence and you're going to live there.
Okay.
And you can make it a little better if you buy a duplex. So there's 2 units. You live in one and you rent out the other one. That's a place that you live. It's your primary residence, but it also has a rental component. And so, your tenants living there will be paying your mortgage. And so immediately you've basically, moved into a house that's now, it's not free, but somebody else is basically paying for your house.
Right.
So that's the hack, right? Because for now, a $400,000 property with 2 duplex, with 2 units, it's a duplex. You now are into it for $20,000, and somebody else is going to pay that loan for the next 30 years, right? So that's like a pretty good way to get into real estate.
Yeah. That's the hack with John Blatchford. Can we trademark that? I like that. Like, that's a great T-shirt. Like, that's the hack,
That's
and then
hack.
with John Blatchford on the back of the T-shirt. That's cool. That sounds awesome.
Thumbs up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that's one way, right? You don't have a ton of money. You have a salary. You're just trying to like, okay, how do I start building some equity? How do I maybe start building for retirement? And that's one way to do it. And you don't need a ton of cash. The potential downside of that, of course, is you can't do that regularly. The whole program of the FHA is like your primary residence. So, you're supposed to live there. I think you can only do one of those like once a year. And so, that's the hack. You get into it, and that's like a good way to get your first property.
And FHA works for duplexes?
Yeah, if it's your primary residence. Like
Okay.
Yeah.
This is a safe space for all questions, whether they be the most intelligent, beautiful thing or the stupidest thing.
Are you about to ask a terrible?
I'm about to ask a stupid question. What does it stand for? FHA.
Fair Homes Act, I think.
Okay.
And, the intent of that program is, our housing policy throughout history has been fairly racist. Certain people, certainly black people, could not get loans. And, homeownership was expensive. If, historically it would cost a lot of money, 20%, 50% of the home cost to buy a home. So to buy, $200,000 house, you need $100,000 in cash. So this program, it's a federal program where now you only need, say 5%. And it's really trying to encourage home ownership for people that, aren't already rich. And then, you pay that off over 30 years.
Yeah. Interesting. 1934, Congress created the FHA loan. Little trivia fact. That's cool.
Yeah. And then, depending where you are, depending who your lender is, there are a lot of sort of like first-time homebuyer programs. Friends of ours through Wells Fargo years ago, were able to buy houses, I think, with even less money down. And, so there's really kind of creative ways that you can, especially buy the place that you're going to live. And then the hack is like, then you get a tenant. The extreme hack, which my friend did, is not only did he have a duplex that he rented out one unit, he then in his unit had roommates who paid him rent.
Really?
Yeah. And
That's a lot of people
that's
within
a lot of people.
one building.
And that's a pretty extreme way to do it. But, he was
Yeah.
in his, maybe early 20s. And so that's one way. Yeah.
Sure. That's awesome. That's very, very cool. Yeah. I mean, like, this is, I don't know if I don't want to speak for the both of us, Patrick, but like amongst all of my friends, like straight out of college, like getting like big boy jobs for the first time, like right when you leave school, this was the most common tactic for home buying for most of my close friends. Was we bought a property, we bought a duplex, we rented out one unit and we stayed in the other one. And then eventually, once we felt comfortable with that, we bought a property that was just for myself and my wife, for my partner, and then we rented out the other unit, and now we have this investment property that's on the side. This is like the most common thing I think used by people in my certain my age bracket, for sure.
I had my first friend to buy a house. It was pretty much right out of college. He got some sort of, I don't know how, but he got a rent to own contract. Worked really nicely for him, and then he had a roommate who paid rent to him, to help cover that rent to own thing. And then I lived there for like 2 months and paid, crashed at his place for a sec too. But rent to own, that wouldn't be the same thing as house hacking. Is house hacking specifically like owning a property, living in that property, and then having somebody also live in that property paying you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the term house hacking.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so again, the hack is like, anybody can buy real estate. You can go out and buy a property, but the expensive way to do it is, $400,000 property, you put in $100,000, you get a loan for the rest, whatever. So the hack is really like, okay, it's your primary residence, you need much less cash, and then you have a tenant. And I think the other good, like, assuming you want to get maybe more into real estate, is it's such a good, relatively low risk way to appreciate what it's like to have a tenant, to have maintenance issues, to maybe do a little light renovation, to redo the kitchen, see if you can add value. Like, oh, someone might rent there for $700 a month, but like, what if you redid the bathroom? Would they pay $750?
Right.
So you can start to like all the fundamentals, I think, of real estate. You can start to get through that. Managing a construction thing. Like maybe you want to invest $5,000 into the kitchen over there, and invest a little more there. And just see what that's like. What's it like hiring a plumber? What's it like, finding a flooring person? Oh, they didn't show up. Oh, they took your money and ran. Like whatever. Like all the things those are the exact same problems at $100,000 project and $1 million project. Like you start to get a taste for like what it is to own real estate, manage real estate, and do construction.
Okay.
So it's it's a really nice lead in, I think, to.
Okay.
Would you always recommend house hacking to first-time buyers, or is there situations where that might not be the best idea?
I think as an investment, I think a mistake people make is viewing buying your primary house as this like great investment. It can be a great investment, but you're still going to pay that mortgage every month. The roof, fails and you have to fix that.
Mm-hmm.
You're really just hoping it gains value over time, which it has pretty much the last 20 years, but that's not necessarily a guarantee. So I think you should buy your primary house to be happy. Like you want it to be yours. It has the bedrooms you need. You can paint the kitchen and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Like, it makes you happy. But if you want it to be an investment, somebody paying your mortgage, your loan every month, like that starts to be a really great investment.
Got it.
Gotcha. Okay. Are there any local zoning considerations or legality that you have to consider when doing house hacking?
Yeah. So, again, I think the hacking piece, people think like, okay, I can do this here. And then, I don't even have to live there. And then I can do another one. And, people try to get sneaky with that. And obviously, you're taking money from the federal government. And so, I think you need to be careful that you're like doing what the program intends, which is, to buy and live in a home. And then, anytime you're doing construction, if it's not already a duplex and you're turning it into a duplex, you definitely want to check that. Does the zoning allow for a 2-unit? Don't buy a property that's only a single family home expecting that you can maybe build an accessory unit or you can turn the attic into a rental. Like, that's pretty highly regulated. And, if you get caught, it's like you have someone living in this fire risk attic.
Right.
Like that's a pretty serious thing.
Yeah, I feel as someone that owns a lot of property and have developed property in Cincinnati, like I feel like I have witnessed a lot of some, let's call them janky homes, like old Cincinnati homes that have been renovated into like 3-family units or whatever. Like, I mean, do you see this relatively commonly? People like trying to get around it and like doing this sort of stuff with house hacking?
Yeah, and it often does happen that historic buildings don't need to meet current building code. Like that is allowed, some of the time. Like for example, buildings we renovate where the stair handrail is lower than the current building code, but they don't make us match the current building code because it's a historic building, it's historically protected. So there are cases where like it's still legal, it's totally fine, it just doesn't quite match what we would expect today.
Right.
But there's also the case of like, yeah, if you turn a single family house into 3 units and you don't have a fire escape, you know, like that's quite risky. And that happens a lot around universities. It happens around UC. I think, you know, there have been cases recently, or not recently, but years ago, like, you know, a kind of unpermitted, unapproved attic unit that becomes super dangerous. So yeah, you want to be careful of that because, okay, maybe you can sneak by for a period of time, but eventually, like, you know, that's like pretty life ruining.
Right.
You know,
You
get caught doing illegal stuff.
Yeah. So in short, make sure you're within those guidelines,
if
check
you need a
professional
permit,
resources and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're doing construction, you know, if it's a small thing, you often don't need a permit, but you know, if you're redoing the kitchen, certainly wiring and plumbing and, you know, you need permits for that kind of stuff.
Yeah. But it seems like a lot of people that do end up going the house hacking route tend to look for places that are already pretty established as duplexes.
Yeah.
It's going to cost more to be able to to buy a place that's not suited to be a duplex or a multifamily and then renovating it yourself. That takes additional costs. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So a current duplex, and you know, and the if it exists as a duplex, that's the best case. And if you can then invest a little bit of money, make the kitchen nicer, make the bathroom nicer, add another bathroom, add a bedroom, you know, legally, you know, if you can add a little value, that also like obviously creates, you know, makes a more valuable property.
So we've talked a lot about the positives of this thing. It sounds good. It sounds too good to be true. It sounds like a cool tool to use for a lot of different people. What are the cons? What are there any big like glaring like this might be something that you really need to really consider for your day-to-day life if you decide to go this route?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I think you now have a tenant, right? And in an apartment building or you know, a unit you're renting, that's 24/7. If their heat goes out at 3 a.m.,
right,
you have to fix the heat at 3 a.m. And especially if you're going to try to manage it yourself, you know, that's the most cost-effective way. You just directly manage it. But that means you're the maintenance person, you're support, you're the support line. They'll call you, they text you, and you live next to them, and they're going to see you all the time. You know, like, hey, that leak is still going on, you know, in the roof. Like, hey, you know, so it can be like quite uncomfortable. It can be quite annoying.
Yeah.
And, you know, yeah, you just now have to live, you know, next to or near, you know, effectively your customer. So I think that's probably the main thing. And, you know, I think the other is like, you know, this by itself is probably not going to make you rich. You know, you have a big loan on the property.
Sure,
it's worth $300,000, but your loan is for, you know, 285 of that. So, you know, it's not like you're not all of a sudden own a $300,000 thing. So there's that. But yeah, I think the main thing is like you now have a customer that lives right next to you. They're going to have maintenance issues that could potentially be 24/7. People can trash places. You know, you guys know you've talked a lot about the horror stories of managing property.
Yeah.
So if you have a bad tenant or a building that's falling apart, that can be painful.
Would this be considered house hacking? Because I know it's like some people who Airbnb like a room out of their house, for example, like they've got like a basement room or something else. Is that kind of in the umbrella of house hacking?
Yeah, I think Airbnb and the short-term rentals have opened up kind of a whole new world where if you're traveling or if you have a space or a room that you can rent out, again, you know, legally, check your regulations, blah blah. But you know, a place that you can rent out legally on a Airbnb or a short-term rental site, I think that's a similar thing, and that's potentially opened it up to a lot more people where, you know, you just have a 4-bedroom house and you can rent one room, you know, occasionally on Airbnb or something. So yeah, which I think is smart. Again, it's the same problems you have to manage. You have to checking in. You have, you know, the same potential issues. But if you can make $10,000 a year, $5,000 a year from rent, like that's
it's a constant flow of income. Yeah.
Imagine doing like the trifecta, right? You get it all. You buy the duplex, right? You rent out one of the units to somebody that you know. You have roommates in your room that you can also have pay you rent, and then you have a shed out back that you convert into like a luxury like weekend Airbnb. You just get do they call that in the industry the ultimate hack?
That's a supreme hack.
The supreme hack.
That's
I
like the Matrix.
That.
You basically just have it, you know.
Exactly. Numbers swirling around your head. You can see through time. It's perfect. Yeah.
I think you know, another version of this too is there are a lot more. There are more areas that are allowing like ADUs, if you've heard that term, like an accessory dwelling unit. So, for example, in like California or Houston, Texas, you have single-family areas. They're pretty low density, you know, big lots of land. But now they're allowing you to build an accessory dwelling unit. So you have a big yard. On the back of your yard, you can build like a 1-bedroom little, you know, tiny house and potentially rent that out. So
Barn dominium. Remember we talked about that?
Yeah.
You could build a mini barn dominium house in the
Yeah.
backyard. That's
exactly,
cool.
and rent
Okay.
that out, and you took what was your yard, and now you have a rental unit there.
Can you house hack in the big city? Like, I mean, we talked about like having like a rural area or a duplex or whatever like that, but like here in like a highly populated skyrise place like a Cincinnati or a New York or wherever, it's like certainly must be harder.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Stop overpaying for property management software. Inago gives you everything: applications, screening, lease signing, rent collection for free. It's a powerful, full-featured platform trusted by thousands of landlords with no fees or contracts. Sign up at inago.com today. That's INNAGO.com/podcast.
Yeah, I think there are versions of investing in a condo and fixing that up and renting it out. A friend of ours did that. Basically, had a condo and then lived there for a year and then rented it out. So I think you can do that in more of like a high-rise condo setting. But I think the true hack of like you live in one and rent out the other one, like it's pretty rare to be able to buy like 2 units as part of like a building condo.
Okay.
It applies a lot more to like a standalone building that has 2 units already in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get my first landlord. I think that's pretty much what he had, a property, and then he made like the first level like a separate unit, like through construction and stuff. So I guess that was technically house hacking.
Yeah, probably.
Right.
So what's the biggest mistake that you often see first-time house hackers make? Is there like you're like reaching through you're like, I wish I could have just told you this. Don't do this one stupid thing. Is there anything that jumps out at you when you see people go into it for the first time?
Yeah, I think the idea that like this alone will make you rich.
Okay.
I can think of a friend of ours who was doing this and renting out properties, and was like, okay, now I can own this building forever. But at some point you're just kind of managing tenants, and you have this asset that if you sold it, you could put whatever $50,000 or $100,000 of cash in your account. I think people are romantically attracted to like owning real estate and having that for a long term, and like that by itself will lead to wealth. And it's more like a good investment strategy rather than like a wealth builder, I would say. And so like once you do the house hack, I would say like you want to try to add some value, redo a kitchen, redo a bathroom, pay down the mortgage, maybe replace the roof, like add some value to it. And then for me, like I don't think you then probably want to own that property forever, assuming you want to like try to build some wealth. If you're just trying to like save for retirement, then sure, just own it for 30 years. But
Okay. Patrick, you got any questions for our friend John here?
No.
You took a while to think about that. That's good.
Yeah. I think you covered pretty much most of my questions.
Okay. How do you think you would do, Patrick, as a house hacker, professional house hacker, Patrick?
How do I think I would do? I mean, like it was always kind of it made sense to me to get a duplex, live in one unit, rent out the other. I didn't know that was called house hacking. I just thought that was called buying a duplex, renting the other half out.
Again, like the special hack is like if you can do that with an FHA loan and get like a $400,000 property, which that number sounds impossible to buy for most people. It's like, but if you only need $20,000, which is still a lot of money.
Yeah.
You can imagine like saving your way to get there, and that's like a hack to own. Oh, you are now literally a multifamily real estate owner. And it only took $20,000. So I think that's like the hack.
And you might have clarified this with the FHA, but for everyone listening, you can really only utilize that once, right? Or is that something that you can do multiple times with the FHA loan? Like, could you theoretically get one as your first property and then like use another FHA loan for another property down the road?
I believe you then have to live there for a year.
Okay.
And then I believe if you sell the property, there's some like lockout period where, a period of time where you can't do it again. Because, they're not trying to like build real estate developers. They're trying to build like homeowners.
Mm-hmm.
How does one get an FHA loan? Is it a pretty easy process, or are there like a ton of hoops?
It's not a ton of hoops. It's basically a government program administered by banks.
Gotcha.
So like there are, they have to be like an FSA registered bank, and there's certain banks that will specialize in that. But yeah, basically a government program administered by like any or a lot of like local banks.
And would most like first time home owners be able to get approved for one pretty easily?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think their intent is to encourage home buying.
So for people like me and Zach who've never owned property before, but like want to in the next few years, like an FHA loan is a very real thing that we can like realistically have.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
And again, the main thing is you just need a lot less cash.
Yeah, I mean, it just sounds. Now, are like the interest rates like a lot higher on FHA loans?
No, I think they're competitive with like your normal mortgage rates.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds too good to be true.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
The
what's the
government's,
catch?
the government's like, come on, Zach, come on, Patrick, come on, take it.
The government
take
wants
out
us
this
to
nice
do well?
loan.
No.
Especially first time home buyer. I think that's really the intent. But yeah, I think the main thing to look out for, which is true for any rental, is just like having good tenants, right? Like a bad tenant can ruin your life, especially if they live right next to you or below you or whatever.
You've had experience with this. How do you maintain a good tenant-landlord relationship?
I think even if it's someone who seems nice and whatever, like you put them through the normal screening.
For sure.
They apply, credit check, all that. You have a proper lease. You can evict them if things don't go well. I do think, like in my experience, you want to be friendly and like, oh, someone's a little late on rent, and okay, they can pay it. But the more you kind of let that stuff go, the worse it gets. In my experience. So
for sure,
it's just an agreement, and rent is due at the beginning of the month, and there are quiet hours, and whatever you want to put in there. But I think your life is a lot better if you like kind of enforce the lease, I guess.
Okay.
And screen up front, because it's once you get someone bad in there, like that's a different situation. Yeah.
Maybe one of these days we'll have to bring you back on the pod to talk about like an in-depth on like doing applications and like getting like a tenant screened. I feel like that could be a good thorough discussion that we could have.
Yeah.
Like the whole onboarding a tenant process.
Yeah,
from start to finish.
Yeah. Yeah. That would be good.
Okay. Cool. Any other tidbits of wisdom that you feel like sharing before we wrap this bad boy up?
No, I think that's it. And I think if you're looking to buy your first property, you're looking to buy your first home, I think this house hack FHA, I think, is a good way to do it. And it really just comes down to like what's the goal? Do you want to be a real estate developer? Do you want to build for retirement? And I think that really is going to impact like how you view buying property. But yeah, if you're looking to be an investor, if you want to build some net worth, build some retirement, I think property where people pay you makes sense. And
for sure.
But owning your primary home is just a great way to be happy. So those are two separate things.
Okay. Cool.
Makes sense.
Well, that is a wrap on our deep dive into house hacking. Real estate strategy is part investment, part lifestyle shift. And email questions at the Rentish Pod if you've done the Ultra hack. What did we call it? Mega hack?
Mega hack?
Mega hack? Ultra hack.
The Matrix hack.
Yeah, the Matrix hack. If you've been able to accomplish the Matrix hack, please email us. John, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Do you want to tell the folks where they can find out more about you and about cohorts?
Yeah, I run a community basically of real estate operators and developers and investors. It's called Cohorts, so joincohorts.com. And then I'm on all socials, LinkedIn, Twitter, at John J. Blatchford.
Can you spell cohorts.com?
Yeah, so it's joincohorts.com. Join, COHORTS.com.
Join cohort. I thought you were telling people to join cohorts.com.
The entire site, joincohorts.com.
But it's join cohorts. Like you,
Patrick, we're trying to inform the audience, not confuse them.
No, I got it.
I got it. All right. Well, whether you're splitting a duplex, renting out your basement, or just listing a room, house hacking can be a smart way to lower your cost of living and start building equity. We've learned that with John today. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Rentish Podcast. As a reminder, we can be found at the Rentish Pod on Instagram. Email questions at therentishpod.com. And give us a rating, a review if you're on Spotify, 5 stars if you're on Apple Podcasts or any other podcast service. Go ahead and slide that scale all the way up to 10 or however far it goes. And drop us a comment. Tell us how much you're enjoying the show. And I've been Zach. That's been Patrick. That's been John. And we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, guys.
What if you had a network of mentors and peers to guide you through your toughest challenges? Cohorts is a private network of experienced investors who share lessons, insights, and support at every stage of growth. Whether you're managing 10 million or 1 billion in assets, Cohorts helps you build smarter and avoid costly mistakes. Learn more and join the community at joincohorts.com/podcast.